I'm Tom, Alchemy Wizard. Welcome back, guys. Today I'm gonna talk about the basics of starting your own colloidal nanoparticle setup. I've gotten some questions this week about clarifying things on what you need to start with. I mean, as impressive as my laboratory here is with all of my stuff, it's not how I started getting involved with colloidal nanoparticles. I started basically with this very basic, I'll show you a picture or a video of it. It's kind of been retired now, but that's how I started. I started with, and then moved on to other things. And I've done videos like this before, but I thought it might be nice to redo a more modern version of those older videos on what you really need to start with when you want to start with creating nanoparticles. And the first thing you want to do is, most people, they want to get involved in creating nanoparticles because they want to improve their health. And that's a excellent way of getting involved in colloidal nanoparticles. But I will say that you should do your research on colloidal nanoparticles, and you should decide for yourself if colloidal nanoparticles are for you or not. I can't make that decision for you. You can look up the properties of the various metals, and we're going to talk about what I consider the basic metals that you should start with. But you, again, have to be the one to make these ultimate decisions and make them informed. I'm going to show you that you don't need to spend a lot of money to get started with a basic setup so that you can cook the basic metals, which I consider, and a more expanded metal would be gold, but then you would need a little bit more, you'd have to invest a little bit more money in a heated stirrer if you wanted to do gold. And I'm not going to show you how to make a colloidal here. I'm just going to talk about the basics of colloidal nanoparticles, how you tell what you need to do, and how you tell if you got colloidal nanoparticles going on in there. And if you need, I have all sorts of starts to finishes in my library. So if you want to learn about how to make a specific colloidal, you can refer back to them. This video is just kind of an introduction, and maybe, some of you more advanced people that watch my show and have your own labs might even learn a thing or two that you didn't know before. So let's get started here. First, what is a colloidal nanoparticle? Now, I have a show on the difference between colloidal substances and ionic substances, and I will link to that in the description so that you can review that. I'm not going to go into great detail, but basically, a colloidal nanoparticle is a nanoparticle between 1 and 100 nanometers in size that is suspended in the liquid. Think about tiny pieces of metal floating around in the liquid. It's not dissolved in the liquid. It's its own little entity that has been created in such a way that it's able to almost be like a soluble substance. And the body knows how to handle these colloidal nanoparticles, and in many ways, it is a superior delivery agent for nutrients into the body. And the pharmaceutical industry is experimenting with this because they're coming to realize that it might be possible that they can use these nanoparticles and stuff them with their pharmaceuticals and get the body to better absorb their materials. But that's not what we're making today. We're making just a pure metal that's going to float around in the solution. It's not dissolved, and what basically that means is that it stays within the water in your body. If you when you pass water out of your system, the colloidal will then, if it hasn't been utilized by the body mechanism, it just passes out of the body because it's a suspended particle as opposed to ionic particle. Now, let's start with a basic setup. Now, you can go online and you can look up generators, and you'll find a whole host of stuff from anywhere from $100 to $300 where they pack everything together. To be honest, you can go that way, but you might save some money and get some a little better stuff if you shopped around a little bit. So I'm going to show you the individual pieces that I think you need, and if you want to buy one of those prepackaged things, that's fine too. You can start with that, like I did. So one of the things you're going to need is a power supply. This is one of these. Well, you'll see that these setups that they sell on online come with some kind of a power supply. This is a very small, low amperage power supply. It'd be absolutely fine for zinc and copper. It won't work for gold. For gold, you're going to need a more heftier power supply. But being as this is a beginner guide, let's just go with this. And I will link to what I consider to be a medium grade power supply in the description for you that actually would be good for gold as well. And might just be a few more dollars than buying one of these bricks. And you cut off the ends like I've done here, and you use basic alligator clips to connect them to your wires and to connect to the metal in the setup. The next thing you need is some kind of a jar. I got a beaker here, but I started with a mason jar. You can use mason jar or beaker, that doesn't matter. That's a 500 milliliter jar. I would recommend you start with 500 milliliters. Most people like to cook in batches of 1,000 milliliters. I like to cook smaller batches. Just my prerogative, I suppose. So you need some kind of a beaker. I'll link to the beakers in the bottom section, or like I said, you can just get a mason jar. Stirrer. It's important to move the fluid around while you're making the colloidals. And that's what this is. This is a really low-cost stirrer. And all it does is stir the water around. You turn it on. I don't have any water in here, but as you can see, the little stir bar starts turning and the water is going to stir up. Stirring is really important because if you don't have a stirrer, then the colloidals are going to cram all around in one spot, and you're going to lose. The efficiency of what you're doing is going to go way down. Now as you saw my original rig, I used bubbles. I used a little air pump, and I used bubbles in order to circulate the water around. That works fine, but stirrers these just stirrer only things are not very expensive, and I would just definitely go with one of these stirrers. I'll put a link in the description for a stirrer. Unfortunately, this stirrer is no longer available, but there's another stirrer that I have, that I've purchased, basic stirrer that I keep around here in case I need another stirrer. And you could do that one, or any of the stirrers, non-heated stirrers will work fine. Now, water. You'll have to either purchase the distilled water, or you'll have to buy a distiller and distill it yourself. And you're going to also need a TDS meter. This thing measures how well your distilled water is, and you really need 0 parts per million distilled water. And some of you that are going to distill your own water, and you're going to distill tap water, you may have to distill the water a couple times to reach 0 parts per million distilled water. But there are numerous videos I've done on distillation and various ways that you can distill your water. I pre-filter my water through an RO unit or zero water filter and then distill it. That way, I only have to distill it once and it comes out at 0 parts per million. But if you're just starting out, like I said, all these little things add up. And in the beginning, you don't really need to go all crazy with it. The metals, of course, that you need. Whatever metal that you're deciding that you're going to start with. These happen to be. And I have on my, in the Patreon store, I have blueprints for my tops. If you want to use them, they're just a 3D printer blueprint, and you'll need a 3D printer to print them out, or you'll need to take it to a place to have the 3D printed out. I mean, if you don't want to use a top, you don't really need to use a top. You could just take your wires here. The next thing you're going to need to do is hook up your wire and your alligators. And I've already done here a simple setup that I think works well. I've used a glass rod across the top of the beaker, and I've used masking tape to hold the glass rods in place and the alligator clips, just enough so that we can get started. And then this setup is all ready to go, just to pour fluid in there. And then you hook your leads up to your power supply and plug it in, and you're set. And that starts your nanoparticle adventure right there. Now, let's say you've cooked your solution. How do you know you have nanoparticles in it? That's where a laser comes in handy. And I use a red and a green laser, but my preferred laser when I'm cooking nanoparticles is actually this red laser here with the temperature gun. And I'll put a link in the bottom here. The temperature gun comes in handy down the road if you want to go with a colloidal gold and you need to start heating the water. But that given, this works really well. The laser is not really super powerful, so you don't have to be worried about too much with your eyes. But I always recommend you have to wear some kind of eyewear when you're dealing with lasers, because I'm going to take this laser and I'm going to show you. This is distilled water. Okay, we're going to put the laser through the distilled water. Show you. And as you can see, there's absolutely nothing there. All right. Now the light goes through here, through there, and out there, but it can bounce back into your eyes. So it really is important to wear eyewear whenever you're doing any of these kinds of operations, especially if you're using a green laser, which is much more powerful. All right, and as you can see, the laser beam is the distilled, the particles are being lit up. And that's it. That's all you really need to do to get started in creating nanoparticles yourself. Investment is going to vary depending on what you buy as far as materials go. Whether you want to get a rig that's already set up for you, that's up to you. Or you want to get the individual parts, you can do that as well. So, I'm Tom, Alchemy Wizard. I'll talk to all of you again soon.